All right, today we're jumping back in time, way back, over a century ago. We're going to try and understand what life was really like for a young, working-class kid in England. And here's the best part. We're not going to use dusty old history books. Nope. We're going to hear it straight from the source, from the authentic voice of a man who actually lived through it all, Joe Gerring.
And that right there, those are his words, not mine. It's actually the first thing he says on a recording he made. It feels like he's sitting right here with us, you know? Like he's just leaning in, ready to tell us everything. He's basically saying, come on in, listen up. So let's just paint a picture here for a second. Joe was born in 1903. Just think about that. That means his entire childhood was set against the backdrop of the First World War. I mean, what a time of incredible change and chaos. His memories, they're like this amazing time capsule, a window into a world that's, well, it's pretty hard for us to even imagine today. A world where childhood as we think of it just wasn't a thing for a lot of kids.
So for a boy like Joe, life was all about one thing, work. And I mean, it started almost as soon as he could walk. This wasn't, doing a few chores to earn pocket money for candy or toy. No way. Work was it was part of the fabric of life for the family, for the community, and it started really young. It all began with these little odd jobs, running errands for a neighbor to earn a penny, helping his dad out with the family rabbits. But it didn't take long for him to kind of graduate to the next level. He started doing actual farm labor at a place called Nutshell Farm. And get this, he had to learn to milk a specific cow every single day, both before and after school. I just love this. It's one of my favorite things he says. He's talking about his jobs on the farm, mucking out the calf pen, feeding the calves, and he calls himself a caveman. How great is that? It's just such a perfect, kid-like way to describe what must have been pretty tough, dirty work. It tells you so much about his personality, right? And for all that work he was doing on the weekends, the milking, the cleaning, the feeding, what was his pay? 3 shillings and 6 pence. It's just wild to think about, isn't it? It really puts into perspective how much hard work went into earning what, to us, sounds like almost nothing. Okay, so this whole routine he had going, it was about to be completely upended by something huge happening on the world stage. The First World War breaks out, and suddenly Joe's part-time farm gig, well, it's about to become his full-time life. And it didn't matter if he was ready for it or not. Here's the thing. In World War I, unlike in the Second World War, they sent pretty much everyone to the front, including skilled farm workers. So what happens? A massive labor crisis back home. I mean, the country still had to eat, right? But all the experienced men were gone. Someone had to step up and do the work.
And that someone, in a lot of cases, was children. Just kids. Joe tells the story about how a man literally came around to his school and poof. Just like that, his education was done. Finished. He was pulled out of the classroom to go work on the farm full-time. He was 11 years old. Let that sink in. 11.
So what does life even look like for an 11-year-old who's now a full-time farmhand in the middle of a war? Well, as you can probably guess, it was a world of just immense responsibility and incredibly tough physical work. Okay, let's walk through his morning. His day kicks off at 6 a.m. Before the sun's even really up, he's got to get the pony harnessed, he's got to milk his cows, and then he has to drive the milk float 4 miles to the train station to make sure it catches the 8 a.m. train. And the craziest part, all of that was just the stuff he had to do before his actual workday on the farm even started. Unbelievable. And the work itself, I mean, it was just so physical. He remembers learning how to plow using these 2 horses that were actually retired from hunting. He said the farm manager would get the plow all set up for him, and then it was just walk all day, up and down the fields. He called the horses nags that would walk your legs off. You can feel how tired he must have been just from the way he says it. So for an entire week of this back-breaking sun-up to sundown work, Joe earned 10 shillings. Now, yeah, that was a pretty big raise from his weekend pay, for sure. But when you really think about the hours he was putting in, the responsibility on his shoulders, it's just a staggering amount, and not in a good way. And this brings us to a real crossroads in Joe's story. It's a conflict that, honestly, is just as relevant today as it was then. It's that classic struggle, right? The choice between doing a job you genuinely love and the pull of needing to make more money.
Joe just lays it out plain and simple. I love farm work, but it was the money. You can totally hear in his voice that he really genuinely loved being on the farm, working with the animals. But loving your job doesn't pay the bills, does it? The reality of the pay was what it was. So when a better offer showed up, he had a really tough choice on his hands.
And the offer was, well, it was a game changer. His farm job paid 10 shillings a week. This new government job, it was offering £1 a week. Now, for those of us not up on old British currency, £1 is 20 shillings. So he was literally being offered double his salary. As a teenager, how do you possibly say no to that? So, of course, he left the farm. He followed the money. He, his brother, and a bunch of other local kids took this government job over at a place called Waverly Wood. But as they were about to find out, more money did not mean an easier life. Not by a long shot. So what was this new government job exactly? Well, it was directly connected to the war. His job was to use a horse to haul these massive timber poles out of the woods. Then a group of women would cut them to the right length, and their final destination, the trenches on the Western Front, where they were used to shore up the walls and hold up sandbags. Pretty incredible to think about. And, Joe had a name for the women he was working with. He called them land gals. This was a really common nickname for the Women's Land Army. That was this whole civilian organization they created to get women into jobs in farming and forestry, basically filling the roles of all the men who were off fighting the war.
So the pay was great, double what he was making. But the living conditions, they were absolutely brutal. Picture this. He and about 20 other guys are all crammed into one single bell tent. They're sleeping on the hard ground right through the winter, and they weren't allowed to have fires because of the fear of air raids. Food was hard to come by, and they had no transportation at all. They were just stuck out there.
But like a lot of these jobs that popped up during the war, it wasn't built to last. Joe just says it didn't last all that long. And when the work dried up, he was right back at square one. Home again, needing to find a job again. It just really highlights how uncertain everything was back then. There was no stability.
So let's just do a quick recap of this whirlwind journey. He starts as a little kid running errands for pennies. He becomes a weekend farmhand for a few shillings. Then at just 11 years old, he's a full-time worker. He leaves that for a better paying but much harder government job, only to have that disappear, leaving him to start all over again. I mean, what a story of just pure resilience.
Joe's story is such a powerful look at that age-old conflict, passion versus pay, doing what you love versus doing what you have to do to survive. For him, the forces were huge: war, poverty, a sense of duty. So it kind of leaves us with a question to think about, right? 100 years later, our world is totally different. But what are the forces shaping the work that we do today?